Yeah, hard to believe.
The summer is flying by.
Summer's flying by. It's back for another month.
Yeah,
so we're already in August.
You just had a vacation.
I did. Just got back. Yeah, it was good to get away. A little cooler weather. So that was good.
And happy anniversary.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just got out to Carmel, California as well for a couple of days, and the weather is nice out there. It's nice to get a break from this Texas summer.
Good to get away from the Texas heat for sure.
Yeah. So I love that each month, I hope we can keep this up. We've been announcing new offices every month for the last 3 months, I believe. So, and we're going to continue by announcing our Horseshoe Bay office today.
Yeah. So, it's kind of an extension of the entire Highland Lakes, Hill Country area. Just in general. Still held by our escrow officer there, Christy Wooten, and her team. She was originally in the Horseshoe Bay market, and so we are glad that to see her, Tiffany, Haley, and Lynn be able to get back into really what is their natural digs. So they're there in Kingsland and there in Horseshoe Bay, and while they're only separated by a few miles, it's nice to have coverage in both, because they're a little bit unique in their own rights, as most those kind of specialized markets are. So we've been able to capture some more business, and we're back in the Horseshoe Bay market, so that's great. And Horseshoe Bay proper, if you will. Yeah. And also have that reach in Kingsland, so it's great.
Well, we've got a few great pieces, marketing materials and information we want to share. And starting with myths debunked in the title insurance industry. Sure. So I want to talk about some overlooked risks that are covered by title insurance. And as a former escrow officer, you're going to probably be able to speak to more specifics and also maybe a few examples. So undisclosed or missing heirs.
Really what we're focused on as a title company is to identify where there's potential pitfalls in the ownership structure and the lineage, if you will, of a piece of property. And one of those places are, properties that get passed down generationally, if you will, where they're passed down intestate, which means without a will, without having any probate, and they kind of go through this line of succession. And oftentimes what happens in situations like that are there'll be estranged siblings, right, or uncles or aunts, just depending on who the heirs may be. There become gaps in who actually has an interest in the property or doesn't have an interest in the property. And so being able to put those jigsaw puzzles together, doing a little bit of that sleuthing is part of what we do to avoid having any kind of claims come back. And so oftentimes what ends up happening is that the person purporting to sell, own the property or wants to sell the property, one of these generational properties, may not have the entire interest consolidated underneath themselves. And they may think they do. I mean, it's nothing nefarious, right? It's just kind of they were there. They didn't realize that their stepdaughter or sister or whatever may have actually some sort of claim in the property. They didn't realize that the adopted brother or sister that they haven't talked to in all of these years may have some sort of claim in the property. Sometimes it's a situation where the property doesn't go down, right? There are no children. So it maybe needs to go back up to parents. And those parents have been divorced, one of them's died, and then there's other things that come into play. Yeah. So these things, it can get a little bit complicated, and it's definitely one of the challenges of handling properties where folks die, somebody has passed away intestate, and there needs to be just really clear line of succession and who has that interest in the property at that point. So that's something we do probably more often than we care to, but that's also that's what happens as people hang on to properties more and more as inventory is more scarce. Right, and people will continue to look for deals. Sometimes those are the types of properties that get sold, and becomes a little bit more prevalent. And so I think, as escrow professionals, we become a little bit more attuned to handling those, and I think it's become probably a bit more routine than we would even care to have it. It would be nice if they were all just standard retail cut and dry Trek contracts, you know.
Well, I imagine historically, right, we depended as a title company on the disclosure of the parties involved in the transaction, on who the heirs were, et cetera, who were the interested parties. In the last, 10 or 20 years with genetic testing, I know that I have a couple of different friends that through 23andMe and different genetic testing found out that they had siblings or half siblings that they weren't aware of. And so I've heard about it several times. So I have to imagine that then there's those heirs are realize that maybe they've got claim to some property that they just weren't even aware of. So,
well, I'm thankful that hasn't been a case here. We don't necessarily have any kind of issues with these long lost heirs that they didn't know that they were related to. So I wouldn't want to. That I think would be one of those really extreme circumstances. I think that typically what ends up happening here is it's more along the lines of mixed families, right? Blended families. That what ends up happening is as things move along, the heirs of one party or another think that they have the full interest in the property because maybe dad or stepdad died and they were the mom's kids, but dad and mom bought the property together, and so there was a community property right, and so they didn't realize that that sort of thing. Okay. And they haven't heard, they were never close, and they haven't heard from each other, or it happened later on in life or whatever it may be. And it's more along those lines. It's more along, it's the commonality aspect. It's not kind of the wild stories. Okay. It's more along the lines of everyday life and what happens with people. Yeah. And you just don't realize that, that's the way the law works, or, that's the way intestate succession works, and there is actually an interest there that we need to account for. And again, it's not nefarious. It's not that somebody's trying to keep something away from somebody else. They just didn't know any better.
Didn't know, yeah.
And so if that information isn't available, or the title company isn't well versed in it, then you can end up in situations where you're taking things at face value and not doing the homework that you need to do.
Another overlooked risk is forgery and fraud in past documents.
Well, yeah, I think nowadays more than ever, this has become more prominent. People realize how easy it is to transfer home ownership in the public records. And so you hear about it. And then you've had some third-party companies that have come to light that try to insulate against these sorts of things. And far be it for me to say whether or not there's any value to it or not. But there have been multiple, for all title companies, we're all dealing with multiple challenges, and one of those challenges is the ability for people to transfer ownership relatively easily. Yeah. Oftentimes, these fraudsters, what they'll do is they'll see an abandoned lot that's been sitting there for 6, 8, 12 months, maybe 2 or 3 years. And it's something like one of these generational properties where somebody passed away. They didn't even know, their kids didn't even know they had it. They'd long moved. It was some lot they'd forgotten about. It's 5,000 square feet in kind of a less than desirable part of town, or maybe it's just something that they didn't even realize that they owned. Yep. And so somebody comes around, they see it, they keep an eye on it, they do a little bit of homework, and it's not hard to do at all, and they just put themselves in title, and then they quickly put themselves in title, and then it sits for maybe 6 months in title. They let it season or whatever it is, and then they try to sell it, acting as the owner. And those things, they really interject themselves into the mix very easily that way. And so that's been something that we've had to deal with and have to be very aware of. We've got lots of protocols in place, and lots of title companies have really put some standard processes in place where you're constantly double checking and reviewing, who the record owner was, the previous record owner was, how quickly a deed has changed hands, how recently those deeds have changed hands, so you can ratify them. But again, it's one of those things where if you're comfortable and you're not paying attention, or if you don't have the necessary protocols in place, then these things can come back and bite you very quickly. And the scary thing is that they get sold to somebody who improves the land, develops the land, and really does something. and then this long lost heir comes in and says, hang on a second, I never sold that, right?
Yeah.
That was ours. And then you have a bigger problem on your hands.
And we actually have an educational piece on the fraud and raw land, and we'll link that in the comments of this video.
For sure.
Well, human beings are at the center of in title insurance, so we do see occasionally clerical errors and improper recordings.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that those things are relatively benign. They can be relatively quickly fixed, and it's part of it. Like you said, I mean, the human error does come into play, and somebody mistypes something, it becomes a piece of property that was included in a multi-property transaction, and there's that wasn't really an example that I have actually is. Some folks that we know bought a piece of property. I may have actually told this story not too long ago, but it makes sense here too, is they actually bought it without title insurance. But their property got looped into a deed that was two owners back, and they thought the heirs of the owners two properties back still thought they owned the property. All right, still done it, and they included it in a transaction that they didn't realize their parents had sold the property. It was part of a multi-property transaction. They included this lot down in the League City area erroneously, and again, it wasn't intentional, and sold it to a developer. And the developer didn't even realize that they had bought it either. It wasn't something that they were actually, it was more mineral driven. We've helped these customers work through that. They weren't even our customers, but we were helping them work through it because it was brought to our attention. But again, it's one of those things where just a clerical error, a mistake of a lot getting put on that wasn't included, it wasn't the right one. And we've seen that multiple times. Some also in particular counties, just spread out through Texas, some of the record keeping isn't necessarily as good as in other counties.
Right.
The indexing and so on. So sometimes you'll get a misnumbered lot.
Yep.
And so somebody's actually living on lot 13 in block 2, and it's been labeled as lots 15 in block 2 for some amount of time. It's been years and years and years. Nobody noticed, and even in the CAD records, it's not accurate at the paint. And we've seen that happen too. And so it's. The clerical mistakes happen all over the place. Sometimes in the county appraisal district, sometimes in the passing down of property from in sales, and it's incumbent upon us to do the due diligence in the examination and make sure that those properties all connect and tie back to one another.
That's what I was going to say. So at Patten Title, we help fix those errors. I've definitely had people contact me over the years and say, this title company brought this to my attention and said I needed to fix it and come back to them. And so we always try to be at least a guide and help where we can.
Well, yeah, I mean, part of our ethos, right, is we want to be very solutions oriented in all that we do, and what that means. And one thing that is just factually true is that any transaction can actually take place. I mean, like, you can get any piece of property sold. All deals can be closed. Sometimes they don't necessarily close within the time frame that you might expect it to close, right?
Sure.
We want to close something on a 30-day contract or 45-day contract, and then you uncover there may be something wrong, and you've got to kind of dive back into it. But our job, more than anything else, is we'll take it as far as we possibly can from what we do as a title company. But more importantly than that, we'll paint the picture of what it takes to get it from soup to nuts, from A to Z, and sometimes we can pick up the baton and run from the first couple courses of that transaction, but we may need to pass the baton back off to the homeowner, right? Or we may encourage them that they need to seek legal counsel, somebody to represent their interest directly, to have something else done, and then we can pick the baton back up once that's been taken care of. But one thing that we can state very confidently and clearly is that we'll never just punt.
Right.
We'll never just punt
go
the ball
fix
and say,
this
hey,
and come back.
Fix this and come back. We're going to paint the picture for our customers and clients, make sure that they know that this is how you need to approach it. This is where you need to go next. This is what it looks like, and this is where I can step back in and help.
Yeah.
And I think that does separate us from a lot of other people.
I agree. I mean, I've many times gotten those calls that this issue on title has come to my attention, and this other title company has told me to go fix it and come back, and
Sure.
with no direction. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And just a few terms I want to share that are common in our industry that maybe our audience won't be aware of is people say there's blemishes on title. These are some examples, risks, blemishes. And then also when people talk about having curative, that is a curative team or a term used kind of internally within title.
Well, I mean, it's just that it's the cure title. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, so.
Yeah. So just wanted to share those. False impersonation of the true owner, another thing.
Yeah, and I mean, we touched on that just a moment ago.
Yeah.
Just, just the people impersonating who may have actually been the owner, or somebody's passed away, and then they come in. We've seen it where they tried to impersonate, and there are some where they'll the bad actors will be out of state. You'll never see them. They try to do everything remotely because they also know that the owner of the property doesn't live locally, and it's usually these lots, and then they falsify their driver's licenses. Quite honestly, those are a little easier to catch and send up more red flags, but they do happen for sure.
Well, real story, impersonation of an owner. This happened in one of our Central Texas offices. There was a divorce happening, and one of the spouses came in with a boyfriend that was impersonating the husband, trying to maybe get a hold of some proceeds without the husband's knowledge. They, as I said, they were going through a divorce, and our fabulous team caught it.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. Unfortunately, these things happen.
Sure.
Human beings. So anyway, the next overlooked risk is gaps in the chain of title. And that's a term I hear that maybe you could shed a little more light on what gaps in the chain of title means.
Sure. So typically that happens when there's a missing deed. So you'll see really good clarity from owner to owner to owner over however many years, and then all of a sudden there's a new owner that comes into play, and there's no clarity on when you transitioned it to me. It's you've owned the property, or it's been in your family, or you bought it, and you can see who you bought it from and the person before you bought it from, and then all of a sudden I appear in title, and there's no deed from you to me. And that's what constitutes a gap in the chain of title. Usually well, it depends on the circumstance, right? Those are red flags that get run up. Could be fraudulent, could be, just clerical mistakes that took place. Sometimes there's a missing legal description, or the wrong legal description, or something to that nature. Sometimes somebody's just got the deed and never recorded it. A lot of these things happen when there's, uninsured deals that do not go through the title company. So, two individuals are promoting a transaction, they are handling a transaction directly, and they don't realize part of it is to
record it,
put it a public notice.
Okay. Unpaid liens and unrecorded debts.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I think that gets overlooked a lot in the title industry in general is how much we do municipally, and then from a standpoint of just collecting debts for unpaid abstracts of judgment and judgments and so on from court orders and such, that a lot of these things tie to individuals, and then sometimes they tie to properties. And so when they go to sell, oftentimes there are other items that are attached to the property that need to be satisfied, and that the proceeds of those sales need to be used to satisfy some of those. So some of them are as egregious and extenuating as IRS liens or child support liens. Some of them are smaller. Maybe it was an abandoned property and they're weed cutting liens for the city of Houston, like municipally.
Okay.
And so it really depends. But part of what we do is make sure that any monies that are owed by the seller, for the most part, and this isn't unequivocal, and by no means there's exceptions to all things, but for the most part, anything that's owed that would attach to the property should be satisfied at the time of closing. And so oftentimes, in Texas it's a little bit different with homestead laws, but oftentimes we are satisfying anything that's really outstanding against the seller when they go and sell property. Now again, when it's a homestead, there's some other things that come into play, and I don't want to just paint it all with broad strokes, but in general, that's what we do and make sure. And so it's not just necessarily a lien on title because it's the mortgage that you owe, but also there are other things that are owed that need to be satisfied or taken care of, and they get satisfied and taken care of because you're selling an investment property or something of that nature. Sometimes people don't like that and they don't realize it. And then, there are other places that these things come up, or there specifically after the Great Recession and just there's so much loss in value in homes. The government came in and did a lot of second liens, right? And did a lot of forbearance and allowing folks to renegotiate their mortgages. And in exchange for renegotiating their mortgages, they were able to take out what basically were second liens that would sit on the property and be able to get current again on their current mortgages. But oftentimes what happens is those second liens would be tied to a deed of trust. And again, I don't mean to go into the weeds and get a little bit too technical here, but at the heart of it, people didn't realize that when they did these forbearance loans, that there was actually a second lien that was being filed against their property for the amount of money that was being, quote unquote, forgiven, if you will. And if they sold within a certain amount of time, or if they transferred property in any other way, then it wasn't necessarily like they had somebody maybe come in and do some kind of creative finance deal or take over the payments or something without actually paying it off. Those liens were due. And so they would be surprised when they found out, because even when you were going through, if you weren't really diligent about reading the deed of trust and the forbearance agreement, you didn't realize, or they didn't realize, that there were these second liens that were actually attaching to the property. That's right. And so they thought that they were selling for an amount that was going to cover it, and then maybe it wasn't, right? So those have been issues that have come up that, as part of what we have to catch and make sure, so that, again, our job in all of this, and I know we were going to talk about, kind of what title insurance is. We could probably spend all day going through all the potential,
we could.
Things that pop up. So, but, part of what title insurance is it's our job to ensure the new owner that they're buying a piece of property that they can sell, that is only encumbered by the loan or the liens that they're bringing to the table, right?
Yes.
And doesn't have anything else attached to it. And so, there are certain words that get used or phrases that get used, like clear title and, equitable and all these sorts of things. But at the heart of it, really what we do as a title company is we ensure and make sure that whoever is purchasing the piece of property is buying a piece of property that they actually own, that their loan is in first lien position, right? And there's nothing else that's there. And we ensure that both of those things. And, our underwriters insure both of those things. And we operate as their agent. And we give them that peace of mind that this large investment that they're making, or the purchase of the property of their home or whatever it may be, is secure, and what they think it is, that they have their equity in it, and that's not encumbered by anything that they don't know. And so that's we like to believe that we bring a lot of peace of mind to the transaction. Again, we do this often, right? I mean, we do this every day. We do it hundreds of times a month. We work on thousands of files, and it becomes kind of the routine of what we do. So we know what we're looking for, and we know how to approach things. But for the average American, they're going to do this once every 7 to 10 years, whether it's sell a home or refinance a home or whatever it may be. They don't get a lot of practice at all of these sorts of things, and so it can come out of the blue.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's super important to work with an agent. It's super important to work with the title company on all transactions, regardless if you're just selling, between two individuals and you think everything is fine or not. Just the value there. It's a very cost effective. It's in the grand scheme of things, the title component of the closing transaction is less than 1% of the entire transaction.
Absolutely.
And so the peace of mind that comes along with that, and the assurance that comes along with that, you really can't put a price on it. And so if you're going to buy a $700,000 home and you're going to pay less than 1% of that towards making sure that that $700,000, if you borrowed, whatever, 80% of it, and then put down, $140,000 of your own money, 20% to insure. You want to make sure that that's secure, right?
Absolutely.
You want to make sure that money is in your nest egg, and that is the greatest source of wealth for all Americans, right? I mean, in general, that's where most Americans hold the majority of their wealth is in their homes.
Yes.
And so oftentimes there's large cash transactions that are put down to put that equity in. That's their equity. They're expecting the appreciation that allows for them to continue to grow, and then they use that for later on in life. And if you don't take the time, the energy, and effort and invest in making sure that property is secure and exactly what you intended it to be, you could be in for a real surprise later on down the road, especially if you make improvements to it. You could lose out on all of it. And so it's a one-time policy. It insures everything up until that transaction. So we go back and make sure that there's all the things we just talked about.
Yes.
There's clear chain of title. There's no other liens that are attached to it. That the coverages are correct. There are different endorsements that we can talk about
Yes.
as well that ensure that the property's four corners of the property's four corners, right? And that they all connect well, and that nobody is encroaching onto the property. And so all of those things are really what the title company does. And for less than 1% of what your sales price is, that peace of mind is invaluable.
Well, you hit on several things there I want to just make some points on. Absolutely. There's, oftentimes I'll get people that say, oh, if I pay cash, I really don't need title insurance, right?
That's very common.
There's several things I want to hit on. For all the reasons we said, this, bad actors or gap in title, or there's things, just because you're able to purchase it maybe for cash and that person has a deed, doesn't mean that there's not gaps in title previous to that owner that your title company might discover in the future. And title insurance, unlike other insurance, is one time. People forget maybe it's their first time buying a home. So they've bought auto insurance, they've bought renter's insurance, etc. And with that, you pay yearly, right? And so it is unique in this.
Yeah. Well, the significant difference really, right, is that, you pay a premium every year for auto insurance or homeowner's insurance, whatever, for what could potentially happen.
That's right.
Right. For title insurance, you're paying a one-time policy to ensure that nothing is going to happen. Does that make sense?
It's from the past. It's
right.
Yeah.
So we take a one-time. We are paid to do a one-time. It's a one-time payment to confirm that there's nothing going to bite you moving forward. Whereas the other types of insurance that you mentioned are recurring yearly in case something happens in the future.
Yep.
Right. And so that's the significant difference between the two. And again, the premium for title insurance, while we understand, and there are lots of different charges that happen at the time of closing. There are a lot of different things that go on, and we understand that. But having the backing of title insurance in case something that was overlooked or something does take place later on down the road, you've got that policy that says, that one-time policy says, no, we've got you covered. And so your equity is protected. What you put into the property is protected. That's why it's there.
And that policy stays with that person for how long, Eric?
Well, as long as they own the property.
Right. And then also, just want to point out, the cost of title insurance is regulated by the state of Texas. People come from other areas. They think maybe they should shop title insurance.
Yes. So Texas is one of the few states, or the fewer states, that has promulgated rates that are set by the Texas Department, or the Department of Insurance of that particular state. So Texas Department of Insurance sets rates across the entire board. They're non-negotiable. They are what they are, and everyone pays the same. So it doesn't matter if you're closing with Patten Title Company or some other title company, whether it's a big retail agency that is tied to a captive underwriter, or an independent like us who has multiple options to go with different underwriters. And with that is you're going to pay the same amount for a $500,000 home or $1 million home or a $5 million piece of property as you would from anywhere. And it doesn't matter if it's in Houston or if it's in Austin or if it's in Dallas or if it's in El Paso. It's all going to be the same.
And the last thing I want to hit on before we move on to talking about endorsements is who pays for the title insurance policy.
Sure. So that's a customary thing. Okay.
Sure.
There are no hard and real fast rules that dictate who actually pays. If you're purchasing RESPA guidelines, right, state that the buyer actually has the choice as to who pays for it. Now, like we said, it's an expense, and it's a larger expense. It's not completely nominal by any stretch of the imagination. And so, customarily, the way it works in a transaction is that the seller will typically pay for the owner's title policy. That's usually how it flows. But depending on markets, depending on how things go, it can change. And the buyer oftentimes can also step in, decide if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So the question of who chooses the title company often comes up, and again, that's custom. It's a custom sort of thing, and typically it's whoever pays for the title policy chooses who the title company is.
They did update the promulgated forms from TREC a few years ago because I don't remember what it used to be, but it now is check boxes between the buyer and the seller, and so it actually can be either the seller pays for it, the buyer pays for it, or they split it. So basically it is a negotiable item. It's always interesting. You mentioned the RESPA guidelines, and then the policy is for the buyer. So negotiable item, but lots of opinions on it. So
it's an owner's title policy for the new owner.
Yeah.
So and it's very clear that RESPA says the buyer has the choice as to where they want to close.
Yeah.
Right. They can. There's no mincing words about that. They make that very clear. Again, what it comes down to is who wants to pay.
Yeah.
It's all negotiation, and all is really determined on who is making that payment.
We've covered a lot of what is in this great piece that the marketing team put together on common myths about title insurance and overlooked risks, and so there will be a link to that below. Let's talk about endorsements. So I get a lot of questions on endorsements. There's quite a few endorsements. If you look at our marketing piece on endorsements, what are the most common ones?
So endorsements are additions to the standard title policy, and they're twofold. You have some that are specific for the owner, they attach to the owner's title policy, and then you have some that are specific for the lender. Typically, the endorsements that are asked for are lender endorsements. There are standard lender endorsements that come with. Anytime you get a loan, they're going to want additions to the policy, really spelled out, and those endorsements are, really property specific. But there's the deletion of rollback taxes that they want to have added. They want to ensure that taxes are not yet due and payable depending on the time of year. So that's ad valorem property taxes. They want to make sure that if they want to have a survey, or they want to have survey coverage or boundary coverage, and typically that's what the lender is asking for. So they want to have a survey that's included, and there are a couple of endorsements that get tied to that as well. There's an environmental endorsement that lenders always, I carefully using definitives, but typically ask for. Those are really standard. Then if it's a refinance, and if it's in Texas, they're also oftentimes, if it's a home equity loan, there's specific home equity endorsements that they would actually tied to that as well. And most of these endorsements are nominally priced and additions to the cost of the policy, and those that I mentioned are very specific to the lender. Those are the ones the lender always asks for, or typically asks for.
I'm looking at our sheet and the piece that we'll also link. And yes, you're nominal, but $20, $25, 5% of the basic rate. So it is nominal.
Yeah, that's there. And again, these are all set by the. One thing to note here is that these are all set by the state too, right? These are not. These don't fluctuate. Most lenders on traditional transactions, and even on some of the more unique transactions, but most lenders require these endorsements on their transactions. There's exceptions to every rule. Sometimes they don't require a survey. They don't need the survey coverage, but by and large, this is what they're going to ask for. So it's the standard owner's policy plus these endorsements. So the way it works in Texas is that, and the way that it works when it comes to the negotiation of paying the title policy, typically, is if the seller is paying for the delineation on the contract, on the TREC contract specifically, is the owner's title policy. It's not about the lender's title policy. So the owner's title policy is the larger of. In Texas, we have what's called a simultaneous issue, where if there's a purchase of an owner's title policy, you can get the lender's policy for $100 in addition to it. So it's that cost, by and large, falls no matter what back to the buyer. That's because they're having the lender, that's their mortgage, so they're the ones who are responsible for that $100. And typically any endorsements that come along with it, that's usually outside of what the seller agrees to pay when they say they're going to pay for the owner's title policy. Okay. So if you're, the bulk of the cost is that owner's policy, and then the additional cost, maybe it's $200, $300, $400 in additional cost, would be the lender's policy. And that gets issued simultaneously. Now, if you're just buying the owner's the lender's policy by itself, and there's no owner's title policy, then that lender's policy would be basically the same amount. It would be calculated the same way as the owner's policy, just not based on the sales price, but only based on the loan amount. Right. So
let me interject if I could. Why would someone ever buy a lender's policy and not an owner's policy?
On a refinance. Okay. Right. So that's usually where it comes into play. Why would anybody buy a lender's policy and not an owner's title policy? They do it. So
maybe because they don't know better.
Well, there are different reasons.
Okay.
Right? Let's say you buy a $5 million piece of property and you're going to get a $2.5 million loan.
Okay.
You don't want to spend the difference between the $2.5 million and the $5 million on the owner's policy. You feel very confident that everything's okay and that the title search is going to be done on everything. The problem with that is there's a $2.5 million gap in coverage that of equity coverage that you as the owner don't have coverage for, right?
Yeah.
And so you're borrowing $2.5 million. It's less that you're going to pay out of your pocket for just the owner's title policy, and it's not quite half the cost because it's kind of a diminishing increase in between the sales price and the loan amount. As the prices get more expensive, the cost of the title insurance doesn't increase at the same rate, if that makes sense. So. But by and large, that would be an example of someone who feels extremely confident in the purchase that they're making. They're going to buy for $5 million. They want to be frugal about how they would approach it. It's a large policy. It is a large spend, and so rather than spending another $7,500 or $8,000 in title insurance, they feel confident that $2.5 million worth of coverage is going to do all they need to do, and that the lender's covered. Again. The expectation is that, they're not going to have to worry about anything because the same amount of due diligence is going to go into it. However, things happen, and it is far more prudent to insure the entire amount.
Sure.
Right? And especially if the cost is going to be relatively nominal in addition to it's that one-time policy to make sure that you also were covered. And where that also comes into play are some of these other endorsements that it's actually a really great segue, is that there are endorsements that tie directly to the owner's policy too. All right, that are above and beyond just the standard owner's title policy. And they mimic oftentimes the lender's policies. Specifically, the two that come to mind are the shortages in area and T19.1, which is boundary coverage or the survey coverage for the owner. And in both of those come at a percentage of the owner's title policy, but if you don't buy an owner's policy, you won't have those coverages. And those coverages specifically are ensuring that the survey is actually the piece of property that.
So are you talking about shortages in area right now, or
two? There are two different ones. So
Okay.
the shortages in area is the actual boundary coverage. So the property lines, any encroachments, anything into the, and then there's this actual survey coverage that would come along with that, and those piggyback on one another very well. That if you go out and you have a survey of the property done, then there's insurance that the survey that was being done is the actual piece of property, and the items that are in the survey are lined up correctly. So easements and so on that are showing up.
So which one of those protects an owner because I've seen this where the neighbor comes in and says, your fence is on my proproperty, or your shed is on my property, or which one of those endorsements do you hope you have at that point?
You need both. You want both of them.
You want both. Okay. So the endorsements are important for everyday living.
Well, and that's right. And it's important to make sure that those things are done. And so those aren't covered in the standard owner's title policy. So the option to purchase those are there, and that's why. I mean, especially in the example before, if you're buying a large piece of property, an expensive piece of property, you want to make sure that you're getting what you think you're getting, right? The property's situated the way you think it's situated, and also that if there's anything that encroaches or that prohibits you from being able to build, or it's been identified. You know what you're getting into, and that's really important. If you don't have that coverage, then it's a roll of the dice.
It is.
All right. You don't know that maybe there's an easement on the property. You don't know that there could potentially be something that sets back and keeps you from being able to build there, and then there's zero in the way of recourse.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Any other endorsements that, there's a lot. Again, we're going to link to this. There's one specific to condominiums and environmental.
Sure. Okay. And so, and again, most of those, everything you just mentioned, are really tied back to those are lender policy endorsements. Okay. The lender wants additional coverages that are outside of what the standard owner's title policy has and the standard lender's policy has, and they want to insure. And, just kind of a pro tip, if you will, for anybody who is watching or cares, is one of the most important things on a title commitment to review as a buyer is less about it's about Schedule B. So the title commitment is composed of 4 schedules, A through D. Schedule A is the informational section where it tells you what you're buying, who owns it, who's going to be buying it, who the lender is, and gives you kind of just an overview, if you will, of things. And it's important that it's all right. Schedule C are all the items that are going to be cleared up during the process, and they're going to be satisfied in order to issue a title policy. So again, that's incredibly important, but it's going to get taken care of. That's what the title company actually does, right?
Yeah.
The place that Schedule D is strictly informational. Who owns it? Who just more clerical components of title.
Actual facts, right? Actual details.
That's right.
Yeah.
A are details, and D are really housekeeping kinds of things when it comes to the company.
Yeah.
C are the items that are going to get taken care of. Those have to be completed. B is really where the pitfalls lie.
Yeah.
B are the exceptions. B is what the title policy doesn't cover. And so anyone who is reviewing a title commitment, anybody who gets a title commitment, anybody who's buying a piece of property should really pay attention to what's going on Schedule B. That's where the questions need to come from. Those are the things that people need to inquire about if they are so inclined to do, because those are the items that are not covered by the title policy.
Okay.
They're also where certain endorsements can come into play, but it is incumbent. We because of Texas Department of Insurance rules, we can only do so much when it comes to suggestion or pointing. We are not there, and we have certain boundaries as far as what we can point to or answer questions about. Those questions need to be taken to their agent or to a professional. We will assist when possible, or when asked direct questions about it, or to be able to. But when it comes down to endorsements or things, that needs to come from the actual homeowner or the potential buyer.
Okay. But you said there's also lender kind of dictated endorsements, and I've gotten that before where
Sure.
people say, what is this on my closing disclosure, these endorsements? I didn't ask for these.
Yeah.
And so those are going to be kind of lender required endorsements.
Yeah. Well, the lender's going to require endorsements as it relates to Schedule B without a question. They're going to come in and they're going to ask for certain things to be deleted and certain things to be added, and there are additional costs that come into play with it. The lender is going to always ask for those, but it's also as a buyer coming in to buy a piece of property, it's very important to review Schedule B and understand what the exceptions are.
So you've said a couple things I just want to point out. We've got some pieces linked below, also on our website, the ABCs of title commitments that's going to give more detail. Also our calculator. So the computations can get complicated, like you mentioned. Title insurance is less than 1%. It is a scale that changes with the price of the property. Mm-hmm. And so again, there's a great calculator on our website that's going to quickly calculate that for anyone. And also there are boxes to check for the endorsements to be added to the calculations as well.
Absolutely.
Well, a couple last pieces that I want to point out is that we've got highlighted this month is fall business planning. It's an excellent piece, particularly for those in the real estate community. We're linking that below, and it is going to help them really end the year strong. We are in our seasonal time right now that's typically a little busier, really, really prudent to plan to have a strong third and fourth quarter and to do that now. And then we also have a really great piece on weekend getaways. Summer's not over quite yet, almost yet though, but it is weekend getaways.
We got a little bit of time.
A little bit of time, some weekend getaways. The piece is excellent. It hits on golf outings for men, shopping weekends for women, family outings.
Warm for golf still.
Okay, but in September, October, you could plan something. And then one of my personal favorites, Football 101, big thing here in Texas. And we've had a few fantasy football leagues here at Patten Title. And are we going to have a rematch this year? Because Eric, you and I played in the...
I'm tired of winning, so I don't know. I think.
Oh, you have not won every time.
No, I'm pretty sure.
You're one. I won the whole darn thing.
So I don't know. It's definitely something that we like doing, and if we get some interest in it, we can put something together here.
But for anybody out there, it's fantasy football season.
Sure.
Football 101 by Patten Title will help you get your ducks in a row and know what's going on that field.
Or apparently you can call Tiffany. And,
yes, you can.
She'll give you some really good tips on how to draft a team.
You know how I am an Oklahoma alumni, and the year that I won, I stacked my team with every Oklahoma NFL player I could, and I won.
That's not.
That was my strategy.
That's not a good philosophy.
It worked. CeeDee Lamb helped.
Broken
Jalen
clock.
Hurts helped.
Broken clocks right twice a day. I don't know, for all of you out there, I don't know that I would recommend stacking your team with Oklahoma alum to win.
I'll let you know I'm going to do it again.
We'll see how it goes. Maybe we should play. Make sure that the stakes are high on that one.
Well, we've got some milestones to celebrate. Exciting stuff.
Speaking of time flying, it's amazing. One of the things we're real proud of is all the tenured employees that we have here and how long. And it's always fun to see people really starting to build careers with us. And this month's no different.
Yeah, let's start with the man behind bringing you to Patten Title.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Patrick Hurst. So, he's, I believe this is his 19th year with the company. So, big shout out to Patrick, Vice President of Sales, does a great job. And,
does an excellent job, We also have Tony Brown, who is a woman who wears many hats.
One of the backbone, a huge backbone of the company.
Always dependable, time gem winner, and we're all grateful for Tony. 6 years.
Multifaceted, very, very talented young lady.
Yeah, and by the way, upward mobility for Tony, right? How did she start with Patten, and now she's she was the receptionist, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right.
And then
she started off as a receptionist and quickly elevated and grew and became integral in all things. So
she's and I'm sure she'll continue to grow and elevate at our company. We also have Brenda Ortega, 4 years.
That's it. She's an escrow officer out in Katy. She's been a very great addition to the team. Has been there for a long time. Can't imagine what it would be like without her. So
yeah, and also at 4 years is Alex Guerra.
Yep. Another very highly seasoned plant professional, examiner extraordinaire, if you will.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
Exciting, and hopefully will be with us many more years. And then Grace Hilpala.
Yeah, congratulations to her too. She's got some nuptials on the horizon, and so it's been fun to be a part of her journey and growth. And she also started with us as a receptionist here in our River Oaks headquarters, and has quickly elevated and continued to grow. And it's been amazing, her ascension over the past 2 years, but highly talented young lady. So
yeah, providing lots of upward mobility. I'm really proud that we're able to do that.
Well, they provide it for themselves, to be quite honest, right? And that's the talent there that just you can't help it.
Yeah, they do. Alma Campos.
Yeah, so Alma's in Kingwood. She's a little newer to the title industry, but has a strong real estate background and has been a really good addition out in the Kingwood market.
Yeah, 1 year for Alma, and then Heidi Minion, 1 year.
Yeah, so she's no stranger to our industry or the Central Texas market. So really great addition to the team, and super glad that she took up the challenge of becoming a regional vice president of escrow operations out there, and she's doing a great job.
We've kept her busy.
Yep, well, it's a busy job.
Well, thanks for sitting down again.
Happy
Eric.
to do it. Always
it's
good
been
to
enjoyable.
See you. Yeah, likewise.
All right.